If I was sitting here and I had to go across the room to get to a certain goal, but every time I got to the middle of the room, there's fire, heat, pain, it's actually easier for me to just sit here and not even try. Why would I even expose myself to the option of failure and pain and almost like humiliation that I can't get the job done? I tried everything. I tried going this way, that way. I tried jumping over this thing. Didn't work. It's just came back to bite me in the butt every single time. Why would I even try again if every single experience was horrible? How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, I'm gonna be talking about exactly why people get stuck in recovery and why some people just give up. We all know those people. If you have been dealing with these mysterious symptoms with CFS, long COVID, there's probably been a lot of Facebook groups, a lot of Reddit forums, just any kind of forums that you've come across that are super negative. People just venting, people pretty much giving up on recovery, saying, okay, there's no cure, there's no fix to this, I'm doomed forever. And partially it is the medical field's fault because they say there is no cure, which is an absolute lie. So first of all, we need to get that out of our mind. But how do these people get to these states of hopelessness? And I can speak from firsthand experience. I've been hopeless many times during my recovery journey. I have had times where didn't think it was possible to ever walk again, to ever drive again, to ever run again or work out or even live a normal life. I thought I was doomed forever. In fact, there were times when I forgot what it was like to walk. So just a little bit of my backstory. Back in March 2018, I was hospitalized, completely bedbound, needed help eating. I was getting spoon-fed. It was just brutal. I was in the intensive care unit. And then I actually met my doctor who helped show me exactly what was going on and really showed me the blueprint to recovery. And 10 months later, I was hiking up a mountain in Hawaii with my family, watching the sunrise. And if I could do this, and these principles have worked for myself, they've worked for hundreds of people all around the world, and they work for people within our programs. But let's get right into it. Why do people give up on recovery? And I've actually made a little bit of a slideshow here to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. Why do people give up on recovery? I'm gonna break down why. Now, what you have to understand is there is a gap between where you are currently and where you want to go. So if we say you're over here, this is you struggling with the mysterious debilitating symptoms. Every time you try to do something, you flare up. It's just really surviving, right? Where on the other hand, over here, this is where we want to get you to, and that's where you have thriving health. You don't live within limitations. You don't have to watch every single thing you do. You're not living life walking on eggshells. And so that's where we want to get to, but there is a gap, and that's something very important to notice here. There is a gap. Now, the tricky part is how do we close that gap? How do we get you from here to here? Here is the common flare-up experience that people have. They increase activity, they try to get closer to doing those things that normal people do, or doing the things that you want to do, things that you've had in mind, goals that you've had. Maybe you're an athlete, you want to build up to that, so you start walking outside more. Or you're a very social person, you start hanging out with friends more. Or you like working on the computer and you look at the screen way too much. So as you get closer and trying to move closer towards your goals, this is what happens. You experience a flare-up. So I'm always full of analogies on this channel just to break these complex ideas down into the simplest, most easy to understand ways. So if we look at this fire, think about that like a symptom flare-up. You try to reintegrate back into life, and then you experience a little bit of a fire. Now what happens is as soon as you feel that heat, as soon as you feel that discomfort, that's a signal to you saying, okay, don't go there, don't go there. It's kind of like someone trying to walk across a room, but every time they reach a certain point in that room, they flare up and they feel pain, they feel discomfort. And then that's a signal saying, don't do that, don't do that. So they experience that, so they go back to where they came from. That's where you go back to being housebound, back to being bedridden, back to your safe place so you can survive. But then, of course, we as humans, we're gonna try again. And this can work well for some people. Other people, it can backfire. For me, it backfired because I just kept trying to push through. I said, maybe if my mind's just strong enough, I can withstand all these symptoms. Maybe if I just power through it, maybe if I just toughen up, this stuff will go away and I can just go through it, as I did with everything else before in my life. You just jump into the fire and figure it out. In this case, it's a little bit different. So eventually you try again, you try moving towards your goals, and then the heat comes and it burns you. And then you do it again and again and again. And eventually it gets to the point where you may not even do activity, you might just think about it. But in your mind, it's almost like you relive that experience. So it's like that person on one side of the room, right? He's over here right now. Even just the thought of going across the room, he's already feeling the associated pain with it from the fire. He's already imagining, okay, if I step up to this point, there's gonna be a fire and I'm gonna get burned and this is gonna suck and this is gonna hurt. And so it gets to the point where even though the flame isn't even there, the more he experiences that, the more that flame becomes real. And for you, dealing with all your symptoms, without even doing the thing, you're already imagining how intense the symptoms are gonna feel. And guess what? It makes sense. It totally makes sense. Because if you have enough bad experiences with something, of course, your brain goes, okay, let's definitely not do that again. So here's what happens. It will already be preconceived in your mind that if you even do that thing, even thinking about it sometimes, you're gonna feel the symptoms associated because that association has been created. For example, when I was bedridden, I would just think about running. I would just think about lifting weights and my heart rate would increase just thinking about it because my brain was so terrified to do those things. Even just thinking that I had a doctor's appointment the next week, I was terrified because I was imagining how bad the symptoms would be just trying to walk to the car or just trying to sit up in the car or just trying to sit in the doctor's office with all these fluorescent lights, how much of a headache and brain fog that would give me. So we start to have these thoughts inflict real symptoms on us. And so what happens is for that person trying to get across the room, that flame becomes more and more real to the point where your brain is trained to believe that in order to get to here, you will have to go through hell. In order to get to recovery, you're gonna have to jump and stay in the fire for quite a while. And so that's not really a great feeling, right? And this is why people are terrified of symptoms. People are terrified of flare-ups. You have to understand that there is no way to recover without going through some kind of flare-ups. And that is the huge mind shift people have within our programs where people start to make massive progress. I'm not saying they flare up and they just keep going. No, they just understand the flare-ups better. And actually, I'm gonna show you exactly why it's a lot easier to go through the flare-ups when you understand what's going on and you have the right tools to deal with those flare-ups. So it becomes easier to stay where you are rather than go through the fire again and again. If I was sitting here and I had to go across the room to get to a certain goal, but every time I got to the middle of the room, there's fire, heat, pain, it's actually easier for me to just sit here and not even try. Why would I even expose myself to the option of failure and pain and almost like humiliation that I can't get the job done? I tried everything. I tried going this way, that way. I tried jumping over this thing. Didn't work. It just came back to bite me in the butt every single time. So why would I even try again if every single experience was horrible, right? Just like with recovery. I got to the point where why would I even try? I've tried everything. What's the point of getting my hopes up again and just being disappointed? And we see it a lot, when people are finding my channel, maybe for the first time, a lot of people, they say, wow, this is like an epiphany. My mind has been opened. I've never heard this information before. Thank you so much. And other people, and you might be one of them, you're looking at my channel, looking at this information saying, yep, I've been told that before. I've had people promise me they'll help me get better. I've played this game. The amount of times people promised me, like the naturopaths, the specialists, the doctors, the amount of times they said, Miguel, take this medication. You'll be okay if you just take this. All your problems will go away. And then I put all my trust in them, I take it, and I end up getting way worse. So my trust was pretty much broken, right? So there's a lot of people who come to this channel and they're like, okay, another one of these guys, right? All these testimonials, all these case studies, that can't be real because I've tried it all. There's no way that something else works until it finally actually starts to click with them and it actually starts to make sense. So, when you're in that place when it's pretty dark and it feels like there's really no hope, right? When there always is hope, that's the reality. But when it feels like there's no hope, it becomes easier to stay where you are rather than go through the fire again and again. And the people who are like this are the people you're gonna find on forums, people you're gonna find on the Facebook groups. And I don't mean that as an insult by any means whatsoever. I myself was in those forums. However, I never posted in there saying, I can't take it anymore. You can't recover from this. I've never been that guy to spread negativity onto other people, right? But for those people who are doing that, you want to stay as far away from them as possible. Because guess what? Why would you even listen to them? Why would you take advice from someone who isn't recovered? It's kind of like going to a gym and hiring a personal trainer who's not fit. You'd never take their advice. So same thing with recovery, just a side note, do not take advice from people who haven't been in your shoes. And if they have, make sure they recovered, or at least better than you if you're gonna take some advice from them. So here's a question I wanna ask you. What if you didn't have to suffer every time you moved forward? What if you didn't have to go through an absolutely horrible, unbearable flare-up every time you increased activity or every time you try to reintegrate back into life? What if it was different? So that's actually possible. And that is where responding well to symptoms or neuroplasticity comes into the picture. So what you have to understand is the stronger emotions you have, the more amygdala activity you have, which equals more nervous system hypersensitivity. Your amygdala is a part of your brainstem, and I'm not going to go too deep down this rabbit hole of science, but all you need to know is what's really causing all of this is extreme emotions, right? And let me show you an example if you don't believe me. Think of a time when you went to do an activity. Maybe it was going out for a car ride on the way to a doctor's appointment. There were times when you did that and you actually felt decent, and there were no big punishments from your body. There was no flare up or setback. So there were times when you did it and you were okay. However, there were other times when you did it and you completely flared up. There might have even been times when you did way less than that and you flared up 5 times more. Why is that? The physical activity is way less over here, yet you flared up way more. And that just goes to show that this is not just all a physical thing. There's an actual issue going on in the brain, and it's your amygdala, right? It's a hyperactive amygdala that puts you in fight or flight. This is why you feel internal tremors, vibrations, anxiety, high heart rate, all of these fight or flight symptoms. That is your sympathetic mode completely jacked up, right? So stronger emotions equals more amygdala activity equals more hypersensitivity. Now, here's what a hypersensitive brain looks like. There are many parts of your brain which won't be functioning optimally. So if we look on the left here, that's a hypersensitive nervous system brain. And you can see the only thing that's really active is the amygdala. And this is why we can have lots of mood swings. We can be very sensitive to emotions. Like if you're in a flare-up, don't watch a sad movie. If you watch a sad movie, you're gonna be crying your eyes out. Or a violent movie, you're gonna be terrified. It's gonna be really intense. Everything is amplified when your amygdala is overactive. Now, a thriving nervous system, on the other hand, that's where the activity is evenly distributed throughout the brain. That's when you can think both logically and emotionally. So you know why it's so difficult to get through flare-ups, and you can feel like you're going crazy sometimes in terms of just fear and worry. It's like you can't even snap out of it. It's because your amygdala is hyperactive and the rest of your brain is very inactive. So we want your nervous system to be thriving. We want balanced brain activity, which means balanced nervous system activity, and we don't want hypersensitive nervous system brain, right? Now, what we need to do is bring in logic into the equation as symptoms flare up. This is why it's so important to improve your response to symptoms, because in real time, you are neutralizing emotions, right? Let's say the more flare-ups you have, the more intense the symptoms are, your emotions are building and building and building. The more they build up, they're also very correlated with your symptoms. So as your emotions rise, your symptoms rise, right? So when you do become scared or afraid or start to panic, you have to remind yourself, hey, this is just the nervous system, because that neutralizes that emotion, right? It brings the activity down in the amygdala and keeps the energy distributed to other parts of the brain, right? When you're telling yourself this is just the nervous system, brings down activity in the amygdala, brings back logic into the equation, lowers the emotion, increases the logic, and as you lower the activity there in the amygdala, the symptoms also understand that they need to get to that goal on the other side of the fire. So in advancing into the fire, in trying to reintegrate back into life and add on activity with the help of us, we're there hand-holding them, or you don't even have to be in the program. Even just these videos, they can bring back logic into your brain when you are going through the flare-ups. You don't need a program to recover for most people. If you need extra help, we're here for you, but it's not absolutely necessary. When you start to go into the fire, doing the brain retraining, bringing things back to logic, that's kind of like wearing a water suit when you walk through the fire versus going in it bare with no strategy whatsoever, trying to run through it as fast as you can. This is strategic. It's like we're going into the fire with a water suit while pouring water on ourselves the entire time. So you're neutralizing that heat. And obviously, You know, this is just an analogy. I don't expect anybody to be able to walk through fire with just pouring water on themselves. But this person is able to move through that discomfort, through that pain, through that flare-up much easier. Much easier than if they didn't have that brain retraining aspect, that neutralizing emotions aspect. So they're able to move through that fire. Doesn't mean it's not there. It's uncomfortable. It can suck. You're gonna have flare-ups. But once they get to the other side, boom, you get to your goal, then you don't have to do the brain retraining anymore, right? It's only for that short period of time. And you don't have to work so hard on the neuroplasticity stuff because it's not needed. You don't have too many symptoms to deal with. So eventually, you know, there are many flames in recovery, many adjustment periods you have to go through. But eventually, you can take the water suit off and you're gonna reach your goal and you're gonna be happy and you're gonna have a life of thriving health. So all in all, in a nutshell, the main thing I wanna drive home in this video, the main point is you will go through discomfort on the way to recovery. Don't think you can ever recover without having a few hiccups here and there, right? Adjustment periods are on the way, not in the way. And if you haven't watched my video about adjustment periods yet, watch the video up here. It's called The Difference Between Adjustment Periods and Crashes. Adjustment periods are okay. It's kind of like you working out. And if you had a goal to put on muscle, it's you working out, getting sore, and then you rebuilding muscle. Right? There's no way to put on muscle without ever feeling sore. Similar with recovery, there is no way to increase your capacity and reintegrate back into the world without ever getting uncomfortable, without ever having symptom flare-ups. The great news is you can do it on your own by just watching these videos and understanding these principles. The main thing is bringing everything back to logic as much as you can during the flare-ups. You could do it on your own, or we have different programs that can help you. Our main program is Recovery Jumpstart. That's where as you are in the fire, as you are flaring up, we are there with you. We are there on call, basically. Well, not on call, you're not gonna call us, but you can message us 5 days a week and we'll respond. We'll walk you through exactly what you need to do during that flare up. And sometimes you just need somebody who understands your situation to remind you, hey, this was expected, remember? And hey, you've been through this before, right? And also to create a customized plan for you so that way you don't jump in too deep into the fire, right? Because some people can do that. It has to be the right level of discomfort, only just a little bit, just a tiny bit in the beginning. Learning to swim, you dip your toes in, you feel the water, you don't jump into the deep end right all of a sudden, but that's what most people do. Once they start feeling better, they say, all right, mind over matter, let's do it. And then they resume right back into whatever they were doing. And it's just way too much, way too soon. So the reason we have such a high success rate in the program and the people who follow the principles on this channel, the reason why they get better, even in our free Facebook group, is because these principles are principles. They are steps, frameworks that you can follow, and they're not random, right? It's not like we're just throwing a bunch of strategies at you and saying, all right, pick one, go for it, see what works. There's no point giving you 50 different puzzle pieces and saying, all right, put it together. No, we have a step-by-step system, right? And you can check out our Facebook group if you want to see that. If you did want hands-on help, we do have the Recovery Jumpstart program. So I hope this made sense to you. I hope that you look at your symptoms in a different way. And I hope you realize that maybe you have been a little bit afraid to move forward in recovery because you feel like it's going to be absolute hell every time you try getting closer to recovery. And it doesn't have to be that way. That is not the case. There's another way around it. So I hope this inspired you. I hope this gave you some great insight and gave you some great pointers. I hope this made sense. If you did enjoy this video, comment down below if this is something you struggled with. You know, the thought that you had to go through hell in order to get better. Once you learn these principles, recovery doesn't have to be such a grind. Yeah, it's tough sometimes, but you can learn to smile and dance in the rain. So if you did want some help and learn how I recovered and how so many people around the world are recovering, you could click the link down below. You can apply for our Recovery Jumpstart program, and we want to make sure you're a perfect fit before we even get started, because we only take on people who we know this will work for. But if you got some value out of this, make sure to hit that like button, comment down below, hit subscribe, and always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. I'll see you in the next video.